In previous parts of our lecture, we've been focusing on how the communicative process goes throughout the persuasion and what are the elements of this persuasive process. We also outline a number of practical mechanisms that might influence our behavior, and we talk about the rational part of the human beings as well as the people as the storytellers as a narrative paradigm. Right now, let's focus on the digital rhetoric. On the contrary with what is spoken and the art of public speaking in the public places, and on the contrary with the mediated communication through the advertising or some interactive forms of the communication, how does it work in the digital world? Are we all rhetorics? Are we somehow trying to maintain our communication to make it persuasive? Let's take a look. So the digital rhetoric, we do use rhetoric on a very daily basis, sending and receiving information, and we just come up when we communicate with our friends on social media, post in the timeline, comment on our friends' posts, and react on their content. You become a rhetoric when you share your ideas in a forum of monologue, or it can be happening in your personal blog, or in the form of public deliberation on the internet forums when a whole bunch of discussion might happen. Even an interpersonal communication can be somehow founded on the rules of rhetoric. So we can persuade our partners through the interaction by instant messages, for example. So there are multiple digital social media platforms. Communication happens there all the time, and we are the part of this process. Whether it's simply another episode in a continuous history of the rhetoric, or is it more some kind of rapture? This is our question to the digital rhetoric here. And scholars do see digital rhetoric as an extension of classic rhetoric in a digital space. Why do we use it? We use it to persuade, to inform, to inspire, and to entertain. The main question about the definition within the digital rhetoric exists in the literature nowadays. So do we see it just a part of what was happening quite before this? But most scholars would argue that digital rhetoric is the science about the discourse transformation in the digital era. How should we study this discourse in the digital space? Digital discourse can be the new form of discourse, or it just supposed to go with the logic of an old school or ancient Greek rhetoric. Digital rhetoric is discovering means of persuasion in around of the digital space. So we might see it a little bit different. Basically, even though the main ideas are still the same and the whole point of the rhetoric is usually persuasion, the communicative nature of the digital rhetoric might be quite different. But let's take a look on the digital rhetoric through the methods of persuasion in ancient Greece. Well, it does have to be logical, credible, and emotional. And these are the Aristotle's ingredients of the persuasion. Think about your communicative patterns on the internet. Do you really apply to all three of them? And look, this is how we integrated the very first part of our lecture into one of the very last ones to make the story sound credible. We do usually follow the logic, and we want to outline the emotional part of our communication, as well as we want it to be credible. Well, there are two ways of the digital rhetoric development. The first way is the same as in classical rhetoric. Ideas change and people use the variety of forms to present this. For instance, as we discussed, rhetoric needs a stronger fact and evidence as empirical science became quite predominant after 18th century. However, digital rhetoric is unique because it changes with not only the people mind's progress, but also with the technical progress and innovations in the media and the the internet. For instance, video calls in Skype, they would place a higher role on the emotions and the pathos, because people became to see faces of their communicators, and they don't just have to rely on the intonations. Basically, each different tool and each different media would outline and would focus on different senses. So understanding of the senses would be quite essential for the classical rhetorical way of formulating the message and placing it in the right context. So here we come closer to the acknowledgement of the importance of the media as the mean of communication, which does shape the internal structure of the message. And one of the very important terms here would be visual rhetoric. So as we do nowadays focus on the interactive media, we do have different sorts and different ways of the communication. The visual aspect becomes more and more important. This is how YouTube is getting its popularity. Instead of reading, people would prefer watching. This is what's going on between you and I right now. You are watching me talking instead of reading the book. But what do we need to pay attention to in order to make the communication more powerful and more persuasive? Digital rhetoric, in a nutshell, refers to how we are persuaded by the things that we see. When people talk about visual rhetoric, you might be inclined to think that they're referring to the way the images are manipulated to skew the way we do perceive things. But here in visual rhetoric, it's too much about image manipulation, and in fact, we need to focus on few underlying things: the arranging, the layering, and the using right colors and font. So there are some very basic technical things that might help you with the message creation and the message dissemination further on. What are the benefits of digital rhetorics? Well, first of all, it's convergence. As convergence is used highly in digital rhetorics, it's the use of different mediums in one place. This allows increasing persuasion effect and the interactivity. We do enjoy interactive communication, and we do really enjoy having multiple options on the way how we consume information, how we get this information through. The speed would mean that you can immediately start a conversation or even organize a local forum, or you can start your own event online. People don't really have a time to plan and prepare for the conversation here. So speed really defines and shapes somehow the digital rhetoric, on the contrary which was back in the Aristotle's time. He would say that you do need to practice quite a lot. Here, you need to reply on Twitter quite immediately, or for example, in the instant messengers, people will get the notification that the message was seen, so you don't have the time for the delay. Interactivity as another feature on behalf of convergence is a new technological benefit, which does benefit the digital rhetorics. Even being less communicable, you can interact with other users, and these place you in a very interesting context, which would reflect and which would affect the way how you're supposed to craft the message. Unlimited access to the information as a slogan of our Google era allows searching for facts and evidence in the global net, communicate with people from different countries and the different social statuses. But at the same time, we do have to be quite clear and very certain with the facts. We need to check and double check them, as well as the appropriate uses of the different mediums would be a focus of digital rhetorics as a practical discipline, I would say. So appropriate uses of the different mediums in the different spaces allow users to provide quite heterogeneous content, as you can use a photo as a text message as both to persuade your partner to do something which you want, but being more likable on a Facebook, for example, for my particular case, would usually include adding some visual images on the post, and this would get and drive more attention. On the contrary, some people who are quite interesting and they are interested for others in their opinions and what they think about, they would place more importance on the form of text. So choosing your own way to communicate and choosing the right way, an appropriate channel of the communication is quite essential for the digital rhetoric. And all of this is quite possible just because of the wide internet spread and the new tools and mediums that appear online. So digital rhetoric does rely highly on the classic rhetoric as well, but being more interactive, being more complex, it requires a set of different skills and actually many more skills in order to maintain this public discourse. Understanding the digital rhetorics and the public discourse within the internet is important to understand the society, and it's important to maintain yourself quite happy and successful life. So let's now move on to the case finally and see how all these theories can be applied to the practice.